Any point you can do, okay.
Okay, all right. So can I just say thank you to everybody who's joined us tonight. This is SP Therapy Services' first ever webinar. We have had a little practice run, but we hope everything will go well. But please forgive us if we're not technically as savvy as you might expect. I think we're all on a huge learning curve. So we put out this idea, and we have hopefully joining us tonight up to 30 people. And most people are representative from the physiotherapy profession. We have private practice practitioners, NHS practitioners. We have representatives from education who are in undergraduate and postgraduate support. We also have some expert witness physiotherapists that are joining us, as well as a collaboration of solicitors and case managers. So thank you so much for making this conversation possible. George, can I have the next slide, please? So in terms of introductions and housekeeping, myself, I'm Sue Pattison, and I'm joined by my colleagues tonight who are all in these lovely blue screens, so you can keep track of us as hopefully the room fills. And my colleagues are Andrew McVitie, who works in Bury, Jane Holford, who works in Yorkshire, and Anna Zymer, who's our clinic-based therapist, and they will introduce themselves in a minute. In terms of housekeeping, we're going to work through as a discussion the 3 questions that we put on your webinar invite. So we're going to ask you now, please, if you wouldn't mind, to mute your individual connections, such that the team will answer the questions, and then we're going to come back at the end and open the mics up, and hopefully that will engage in a conversation about possible or preferable. George is our admin support, and you will see him in the black screen with admin SP. If you have any technical issues, I am assured if you hover over his screen, 3 dots will appear up on the top right hand side, and he will endeavour to help you out, or you can talk to him via the chat if you have any technical issues. This is a private meeting and it's password protected, so we should be safe. If there is any reason why we're not safe, then we will just abort. And it's just to say to you that this is being recorded, and it will be available on our website tomorrow. But should you not wish to come visually and you wish to remain behind the mic and you want to do it, just either speak to us or type it in, that's also okay. So when it comes to the questions at the end, if we can ask you to just raise your hand, and we will try and come to you in turn. And just thank you so much for your support. I'm going to now perhaps just ask my team to introduce themselves. Jane, would you like to start?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jane Holford. I'm one of the clinical coordinators at SP Therapy Services and physiotherapist that works in Yorkshire and Preferable, probably North Derbyshire, so sort of north of Chesterfield, all the way up past Leeds and Bradford, and run along the M62 corridor meeting my colleagues from the Bury area. I've been with the practice now 11 and a half years. My background, I do both adults and children, but I came to practice as the paediatric specialist.
Anna?
Hello, my name is Anna Zimmer. I'm a neurological physiotherapist and I'm based in clinic in Bury, mostly working with adults with complex neurological conditions, and I've got also a special interest in balance and falls prevention, and that part of the business is open to general population as well, so not only people with neurological conditions.
Andy?
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Andy McVitie. I'm a physiotherapist working with adults and children, based in Bury, but cover the area around Bury. I'm a community physio, not quite as large an area as Jane covers. Yeah, been with the practice since the end of August, I think, last year, and it's turning out to be a very interesting first year in the practice.
Thank you. So I think, like everybody, we were bumbling along, having a good time, enjoying treating our patients, working with them with complex neurological conditions, predominantly head injury and some spinal cord injury. But we were predominantly providing either home visits or clinic visits, and very much a hands-on practice. And like everybody else, the 23rd of March came along and plummeted us and took away our key skill. And I think it's quite difficult for physiotherapists because we identify ourselves so much with our hands and with our handling skills. We train to use our hands, and then we spend a lot of our postgraduate training developing our skills to improve our hands more and more and more. So having taken that skill away because it just wasn't safe, I think there was a little bit of time where we had to sit and think about what it was that we could do. But one of the decisions we made as a practice very, very quickly was that we dealt with a very vulnerable bunch of people, and the one thing we couldn't do was leave them to struggle, and we had to find a way to connect with them, we had to find a way to engage with them, and we had to find a way, at the very, very least, to stop deterioration. And we started to look at our skills more holistically, not only as a pair of hands, but also as educators, motivators, facilitators, problem solvers, expert movement analysis, and observers. And at that point, it was that we decided that we were going to move to remote therapy via video. Can I have the next slide, please, George? So as you can see, we managed to make a very rapid transition in terms of sessions, from the white, which was face-to-face, to the orange, that was remote sessions. They're not all equatable because some patients chose to move from 1 hour session to several shorter sessions, but just on balance, to give you an idea. And actually what you can see is there was a really rapid transition across. And it's not that we were sitting there waiting, having planned and got the strategy sorted. I think what lockdown did was it gave us the time to focus on doing something. Can I have the next slide, please, George? So the other thing is, it wasn't that our patients were sitting there with beautiful devices set up and ready to go. We literally went with what was available. And I think 46% of our patients, the blue one, were choosing and saying they wanted to remain in contact with us via WhatsApp. WhatsApp itself, being a very small screen, presented its own challenges. I certainly think it wouldn't have been our first choice. But actually you can see that the green in the 7% was those people were pending a decision support from others. The 11% were those who had telephone support, and the 7% were those that we never made contact with. This graph relates to where we were just 2 weeks in. That graph is more positive now, and there's actually been a transition away from WhatsApp to more suitable devices. But the most important thing for us was to make that initial connection and to engage with our patients, and that was done very rapidly. So if I can have the next slide, please, George. So we're going to move on to our discussion points here that we put out in our webinar, and I'm going to ask the team to answer these particular questions, and then we're going to come back to you to open up for the forum for discussion, if that's okay. So we've talked about the rapid transition. We've talked about the fact that we didn't have a great master plan. We had been saying during March, well, if this thing kicks off, we'll go for remote therapy. I'm not sure quite that we thought what that actually meant in practice. So I think there were several factors that worked in our favour to be able to transition. Anna, have you any comments? Do you want to take that slide away for us now, George, so we can... Anna, would you like to comment on why you think we were successful?
So obviously on the 23rd of March, we all woke up to a new phenomenon, social distancing, which really stopped us from what we were doing until then. And we obviously asked our patients not to come, or we told them we weren't coming, and we stayed home. And we, as a SPTS, definitely were prepared technologically. We, as a practice, all are set up to work remotely. Since I've joined in 2012, we had our own devices set up to access OneDrive, all GDPR consistent and compliant with all the regulations. And we could have stayed home, switch on the machine, and access all the information we required, access all the software we required, and on the basis of telephone conversation with patients, we technologically could have a go straight away.
Okay. Jane, have you got any comment with regards to how we managed to problem solve some of these issues as a team?
Well, we looked at all the platforms that were available. We looked at the screen sizes. We began to learn Zoom. Who knew the word Zoom? We began to realise that there were other platforms, like obviously we knew about Skype, etc., that might be more, it gives it a better ability. So as the team started to problem solve that and look at that together, and so we had, I suppose, remote therapy sessions with each other. So we looked at angles that worked. Did we need special things to stick the telephones on, you know, those gorilla pads that you can buy that bend all over the place. So we then inform our patients about such things so that we could then start and have, you know, a conversation about, well, what that screen might not be big enough. Do you fancy downloading this app called Zoom? This is how it works. And we've got somebody called George who will help you with that. So we had George working in the background with our patients and us ensuring that we knew how to use the tech. So, and as Anna said, because we were set up to work remotely anyway, we just had to figure out not so much tech as in buying tech, but how to use it really and how to use it successfully, so that sessions were realistic and safe and meaningful for everybody concerned. So we looked at things like, how do we risk assess somebody's house? How do we risk assess space that can be used? How do we ensure that they're safe doing the exercises that we use? So we looked at all sorts of things like that, really.
Andy?
Yeah, following on from that, we one of the reasons I really feel that it was enabled to be done so quickly is that as community physios or with long-term relationships with patients as well, we knew the patients, we knew their families, their carers, their support network, their interests, what they struggled with, what they would like to do. We had a real view of the patients, and that was reciprocal. It was really nice to approach people and say, would you be interested in this? That might be tricky to start off with. And they were coming back with the fact that they valued the treatment. They wanted to continue treatment. They wanted to continue contact with us because it was a valued part of their lives. And so we'd been in their homes. We knew the layout. We knew where might be suitable to work a session, because the sessions we've been doing, and right from the start, we wanted to provide physiotherapy sessions treatment, not contact by the phone to ask them if they're okay or is there anything we can do, but we wanted to continue progressing the patients, and that's what they wanted in this new scary world. They wanted to know that things could still progress as they were. And so we'd already been in their houses, we'd already been in their lounges, and you know, wherever else we might be treating. And so to visualize and to set up how that was going to be possible wasn't that tricky. I think the biggest hurdle to overcome, biggest barrier, was us learning how to use the tech so it was smooth for the patients. To actually sell it, if you like, to the patients and to convince them we were there to help and it could be beneficial was an easy sell. That was, you know.
I think we were in a very unique bubble. Lockdown presented a very unique bubble, didn't it, where families were at home and families were supporting our patients too. And I think a lot of credit goes to our families for sticking by the patients to help them to have this to happen. And also the families of our therapists, as you know, they were having to negotiate spaces in their own houses alongside homeschooling, alongside spouses, remote working, negotiating broadband, because physiotherapy is not something you do at a desk. We needed a space that was adequate, that you could stand up, sit down, balance, stretch. It needed to be a proper working space. So I think there was a lot of preparatory effort that went in, and a lot of support from families, timetables being stuck on doors, notes being put under doors to communicate, so that we could actually keep a session as in our focus on a patient. So thank you. So I think that explains how we kind of got there. And we actually managed to convert 85% of our sessions across. And I think one of the things was the speed with which we actually contacted our patients and didn't let them go under. I think there was an environment as well where, you know, Joe Wicks was on the telly, and exercise was being actually promoted as a very important thing about lockdown. So the second question I'm going to put to the team is, whilst we found it was possible, our big question is it preferable? So I thought it would be useful if I just asked the team just to share a short, very brief case study about particular patients and what they found useful and what they found difficult. Andy, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, certainly. So the one I've chosen is a retired lady living at home alone in a 2-story detached house, very active, no previous health problems, suffered a stroke in the early part of December. She was in a nursing home, but essentially discharged herself because she was so desperate to get back home. Very determined lady, wonderful to work with. And so she was back home. I managed 3, I think it was, visits with her at home. I'd already been seeing her in the nursing home before lockdown suddenly happened. One thing she was delighted about was that we did make quick contact, because this had been playing in her mind, and that early contact to say we're still here was something that she actually mentioned was brilliant. Looking at remote therapy, it all being new, it being distance, I took the opportunity to focus on her upper limb, because that felt nice and safe. I wasn't going to be looking at balance and the mobility issues and that type of thing. How could I do that remotely, was my initial feelings. Wonderful story with that is she went from being unable to butter a slice of toast because she couldn't hold it with her affected arm whilst using her other arm, to baking apple crumbles, dressing herself, all that type of thing. And so I was really feeling great. Therapy, you know, it works, we can do this. But she had a self-stated goal prior to lockdown of returning to upstairs living. She was living, her bedroom was now what was her dining room. Very house proud, wanted things back how they should be. And so how do we tackle the stairs remotely? I knew the layout of the house, and new adaptations had been made. I knew we had 2 banisters. I knew there were no obstacles there, and that could be checked via WhatsApp, which she used. But her son lived in New York, no other family nearby. I couldn't arrange for a close family member to be there at times. And so I've spoken to neighbours, I've spoken to support workers, spoken to all sorts of different people. We set up essentially a process of risk assessing. Let's look at what the issue is. Can we overcome it? If we start very small and we're very realistic and we're open with the patient about we may be able to go so far, but not all the way. Let's see what happens. And to cut a long story short, we're doing a bit of Joe Wicks on the bottom step, getting her out to puff and up and down and that type of thing. She's made it halfway up and down the stairs is where we're at the moment. And it's been slow, but goodness, she loves it, and she can see she's making progress, and she's aware that she's good enough to do it. I keep having to say to her that, you know, don't do anything when you're not talking to me. And yeah, she's absolutely making progress. If I'd have been still continuing face-to-face visits, would she now be upstairs living already, and you know, if everything was normal, probably yes, I would think, you know, we would have been able to get there quicker. She knows she's top of my list for getting back out to see when face-to-face is available again, and that's our aim, and that's kept her motivated. So some things haven't been possible time-wise, but I've been amazed at what you can achieve. The one thing I would have thought that we couldn't have gone anywhere near would be stair work, getting somebody up and down the stairs. And I wouldn't have gone anywhere near it. I was naturally hesitant and a bit worried. And so I had to really to know myself that the next step I was about to take was a safe and measured one. And it was okay to do so. And taking those small steps, problem solving in a group with Jane and Anna. This is something we've problem solved together, and it's possible, absolutely possible. You know, she has improved in all aspects. She has not maintained. She has not taken a step backwards. She's improved across the board, and she's ready and waiting for when face-to-face is done.
Thank you, Andy. Anna, have you got something to share?
So my case, my patient is not as successful. However, little successes have been made. I look after a gentleman after spinal injury with not confirmed, but I think some underlying cognitive issue, probably related to age. He's 75, he's not tech savvy. He has got 2 hearing aids, glasses. English is not his first language, and he has been coming to the clinic. He lives in a nursing home and has got support team speaking Urdu to explain if he struggles a bit in the session. So has been very well supported, progressing fantastically, had a high spinal injury, is now walking with 1 stick. Actually his nursing home went on lockdown 5 days earlier than the general country lockdown. His nursing home management decided they're closing, no one in, no one out, on Friday before the general lockdown. And on that Friday, I already had established communication, actually solicitors approaching the practice, how we're going to work with that lockdown, not knowing the whole country was going to lock down anyway. So the legal team and case manager concern was actually patients' mental health and psychological well-being, which was very interesting factor they picked up with myself. They thought I was the most consistent person in this patient's life, and they wanted to establish communication. They already agreed, which was again very interesting, that maybe we should go to a couple of times a week appointments, possibly shorter. When could I start? It was all very excited until I've rang the patient. And there was a lot of obstacles to establish functional communication. The hearing aids didn't work very well. He only had a mobile phone. He could answer WhatsApp call, so he would answer a normal WhatsApp call. I would explain, click on the camera. He really struggles with hearing and vision. First session was trying 5 pairs of glasses, and I thought we were, after first visit, I thought we were never gonna be successful with any physiotherapy and any exercise because of all these factors. And actually in that case, the case management and the legal team came to place. They straight away said, when I said this is not good idea because the gentleman is actually much more stressed by the whole process, they offered to purchase different device, and again another obstacle occurred. No one could be in, no one could be out, so he had no family or a son or a daughter who could access and set it up for him. Nursing home staff, obviously at this point in time, super busy with looking after all the residents. So we managed to engage the IT gentleman working for the nursing home, and he set it up, taught the patient how to answer Zoom call, because we by then agreed this will be better than WhatsApp, is a bigger view, easier communication. We could have record little clips of how we work, so he could have a video guidance for homework and doing things at his own time. And the IT guy taught how to enter the Zoom room, and we kind of build a relationship to the extent he comes now before every session and checks if the device is at the right angle, if I can see everything. So we unexpectedly got involved, completely someone who is not related to the therapy world. However, he is going to be top of my list to come back because he is deteriorating. Regardless, the technology obstacles being overcome, because he got stripped out of his cues completely, and hands-on work, and I had to back off with the intensity or the level of challenge. He is actually my least successful patient. He is more deterioration maintenance, preventing the maintenance type of client. So yes, it was possible to overcome loads of obstacles, but this definitely is not preferable for this type of patient, where we've got multiple difficulties: age, safety, and not living in his own home. I think had a massive impact, because he had no this on lockdown support like most of our patients. He actually lost his support, private support worker coming and supporting for therapy reasons.
Thank you, Anna. Jane?
Well, my story is about a young gentleman who has an acquired brain injury and multiple orthopedic injuries. And he really took to still wanting the contact, but has never really engaged fully with face-to-face contact over a video link. So I thought, this is never going to work because I can't even see him the full time. So what I engaged with him with is a mixture of video link and texting over WhatsApp, and I've never been able to move him off that. That's what he feels comfortable with. He talks about being on the video all the time has been really uncomfortable. Having said that, I do feel part of that problem is he has a lot of cognitive fatigue, and I do wonder if the sensory overload of using a video link is adding to that problem. However, so I kind of entered this thinking, oh, I don't know. But to support those sessions, and because of those difficulties, I, before every session, write up an exercise sheet of what we are going to do. I have taken exercises that I know he knows incredibly well because of the way we worked beforehand, and I've ensured that they are familiar to him, and so therefore what we're doing is progressing something that he has been doing that I know he can do well before. So I've had to really think around that. And to my surprise, things haven't got better. He's managed to build his strength, he's managed to build his endurance, he's managed to continue with his core stability. One of his goals was to maybe walk better outside, and of course that has been postponed. That's, you know, so that is something that we obviously can't do with a remote session. I have considered perhaps him, because it's a phone, it's to take outside, but because of his inability to kind of cope with being on the screen all the time, I haven't even gone there with that one. I've just chosen not to do that because I don't feel it's safe, and actually how am I going to see him walking? But actually in the home, he's still had twice a week physiotherapy sessions. He has been known to have low mood, and I was concerned about his about that and how socially distancing would impact him, because he attended the gym twice a week with his cousin. He liked to go out, and you know, he's often complained with the good weather that he would have been here, there, and everywhere, often, you know, weekends and that, you know, I would be out in this. So that contact as well has meant that I can see his mental health and his low mood and his sort of executive functioning side, and report any difficulties back to the psychologist if it was required. So again, I suppose the question is, was it possible? Yes. Is it preferable? Not really. However, even in that question, he has made progress.
Thank you, Jen. So our question is possible or preferable. We have learned so much over the last 12 weeks. I think so much that, you know, as a physiotherapist, our hands are our primary tool. I don't think any of us, if I'd have said to my team at the beginning of the year, right, we're not going to use our hands this year, I think there'd have been an absolute outcry. But we have learned lots of skills, and I think we have all decided that if we don't learn from these skills and take these skills forward, it will be a real crying shame, because we've learned so much. So could I just go around the team and say, Andy, what do you want to take forward out of this?
For me, it's to not fall back onto old habits, which I think everybody's possibly in danger of doing. So we met exercise, and Joe Wicks and everything was mentioned before, and everyone was out for their hours exercise. More bikes have been sold over this period of time, you know, than in the last 5 years put together, as everybody's got exercise crazy. Now lockdown's finished, I'm suddenly not seeing so many people on bikes or out for daily walks. I know lockdown hasn't finished, but has been relaxed. And that's just human nature. And I think that we may fall back into that, of going back to what we know best, get our hands on people, go into people's houses. And so being able to spot the opportunities of when it's appropriate, preferable potentially, to actually use remote technology that can make things easier for us, but can also make things easier for the patient in some instances. So I've certainly, the frequency with which I can provide quality short interventions over a week, 3 times a week with a short intervention, as opposed to 1 time a week with a long hour face-to-face, certainly has benefits in certain situations. If I'm working on skills that require repetition, or people with cognitive issues, and the carryover that I've seen in those specific circumstances can be really, really useful. And so it's to spot opportunities, to not forget and just think that's over with now, we go back to how it was, and to keep that in mind when you make future decisions.
Thank you, Andy. Anna, what will you take forward? You're muted.
Sorry. Just the rest of the family came back home, so I had to earlier than expected. It's getting cold, so I definitely not going to put the video link consultations or physiotherapy treatment deep in the chest and forget. I've got several patients who definitely said they would prefer to continue this way. Example is a lady with MS. And I think this group of patients, I think, is demonstrating across. We participated in ACPIN webinar a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of people discussing that group of patients and value. So definitely would stick with certain patients to this platform being mixed with the face-to-face appointments and hands-on appointments. The biggest surprise for me over the last 10-11 weeks has been even the patients with whom I personally struggled to pass to them their ownership over the rehabilitation process, how well they've done, how successful they've been. So sometimes looking from a different angle definitely helps, and maybe sometimes backing off from weekly clinic appointment and saying to them, no, we're going to try a different approach. Definitely, I can see improvement in those most resistant young brain injured male patients who love to be theraped and rehabbed, but not massively engage out of the therapy session. So that choice will definitely stay in my physio toolbox.
Jane?
I think with some of my patients, the screen and being further back has given me a unique viewing point. And it's been incredibly handy in sort of upskilling the patients who have either 24/7 care with support work, or who, you know, rely on that kind of, maybe my sort of low level patients who require on sort of a lot of moving and manual handling. And how I've been able to go, ooh, actually, why have I never spotted that before? And therefore, we've been able to have a healthy discussion about moving and handling, about upskilling their handling techniques so that they're carrying out the therapy programs in between sessions at a higher level, really. And I think it's just the fact that I've been here and got a wider view, and it's suddenly like, oh, all right then. We'll talk about that. So that's the big thing. And echoing my colleagues, really, I think I will definitely, moving forward, I fully expect it to be a mixture of both hands-on and remote sessions in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope by sharing experiences and an honest account of what has happened, we can perhaps open this up and say, you know, remote neurological physiotherapy, is it possible or preferable? And ask if you have any questions of us. You'd like to put your handy thingy up or just wave at us, we'll go with that.
Or any comments or
Silence.
Oh, Jill's waving.
Can you unmute yourself, please, Jill?
Hi, Jill, you're just...
Yeah, good job.
Hello, done it. I think I mean, I've been really surprised because I'm out of the arc and I had never even heard of Zoom or anything, so I never cope with any of this. I think it all just demonstrates how it's another valuable tool that in some instances it can be really helpful. Obviously not with all, it depends on the individual clients, on the settings, this, that and the other, but it just can be a really good tool for, you know, for some areas with some people at some times.
Yeah,
I'm sure we've all learned no end over the last few months. Things we never expected.
yeah,
I agree. Sian?
I just want to say that I think you guys have done just so well with this. I think as physios and OTs, you've had such a challenge to transfer to virtual, but you've taken the challenge and you've just done brilliantly. It's really inspiring for the whole MDT team, and I don't think we will go back to the way things were. I think there's going to be a new normal. I think we're going to take a lot of positives out of it, and I think our care is going to be more effective, more efficient. So I think all the hard work that's been put in will really pay off for years to come. So well done.
Very good.
Vicky?
I just thought, sorry, I'm about to find a cup of tea there. I just thought it was an interesting question to ask you, which is something that's been going around in case management circles, about whether you're documenting in your client notes the benefits and also any pitfalls for each person. Yes.
I think we were very aware from the word go that this wasn't hands-on therapy as we knew. This was doing our jobs a different way. It was using our different skill set as educators, as motivators, as problem solvers, and it wasn't the same. We were very aware from that. So we were very much using our SOAP notes and using our analysis to say what we would have done in a different world. And I think it's really important that we actually explain that, because I think there is, my concern is there's some idea that this is a cheaper alternative. I don't see that at all. You know, my team have been exhausted. They have worked incredibly hard. The amount of preparation work that has to go in order to make something safe, in order to problem solve it via this. I don't think it's a cheaper alternative. I think it is an adjunct, just in the same way a foot splint can be an adjunct to walking. I think a foot splint assists walking, but it's the movement analysis and the problem solving of the physiotherapist that makes it work. And I think what made this work was the team's commitment to make it work. It's not the device and it's not the remote therapy. So for us, it is an adjunct, and it is something that I think will stay. And I think we have got to now, the problem is, isn't it, the more successful it is as remote, we now have the issue of actually justifying going back in face to face. And now we've got the opposite argument to say why we want to go back in and why we want to start to use our hands, particularly as so much of our work is home visits, and that will be difficult.
Yeah, I think that's the next stage, isn't it? The next challenge that we all face, and it's got to come down to risk assessments in this next sort of chapter, and that's got to be individualised for everybody. I guess the only other thing was just to pick up, just really to sort of add to what you said there. Somebody mentioned it being a tool in the toolkit, and it seems to me that it always was a tool in the toolkit, but it was one we weren't very familiar with, and all we've done is become more familiar with it. And I've heard that too, that people being very concerned that the next thing will be, we'll all be expected to do it remotely and very rarely do anything face to face. But I think it'll be about showing you've considered both things and using the knowledge that we have and all that written material about the benefits and disbenefits. And yeah, we might use it sometimes, just as you said, but we'll have the rationale behind it like we would for the foot splint.
Yeah.
But I don't personally think there's a huge problem with that, but I just thought it'd be interesting to see if you were thinking the same. I think we're all having the same conversations and the same thoughts. Reassuring. Thank you.
I may just sort of say there, Vicky, as well, is that I think one thing you've got to remember about face-to-face is that a lot of our work is tone modulation and is correction, non-verbal correction, which you do through your hands. And so that's why it can only ever be an adjunct. And I think that's what we've tried to very, very hard recording our notes, so that it becomes obvious that yes, people have improved, but the cost of that might be that this and this has actually had to be left at one side for now.
We need some projects out of this at the end, not necessarily you guys, but in general within the physio profession in particular, I think, to evidence those things. I'm sure that'll happen.
Thank you, Vicky. Sue Filson, did you have a comment?
I think you've done a wonderful job, and I think it's fascinating, but it makes my life very complicated. Because where am I going? Am I going to say that out of 20 a year that I need for you to treat, how many of them are going to be video conferences? Are you going to, when you do your 3 monthly progress reports, which you always do excellently, so it's fantastic to work from yours, are you going to actually say 3 of them video conferencing and 10 of them hands-on with travel? It if I've got a cost for it from a medico legal point of view for everyone, I'm going to have some guidance.
I think we're going to have to scratch our heads very hard and know what's going on. And yes, we are at the moment, particularly as we go. I think we had a very unique experiment in lockdown, didn't we? Everybody was home, everybody was able to be supported by their family. I think we're facing a very different thing as lockdown eases, as children go back to school, as spouses go back to work, and as people's lives get busier. Patients had no alternative if they chose to engage with us. It will be really interesting to see how successful it is over these next 6 weeks and whether they continue to engage, or, you know, and getting their feedback has been something that we have been including in our reports. So we're not only just reporting the compromises, we've made very sure to actually include the patient's perception. And a lot of the patients have said, really grateful for everything you've done. You know, you've really helped me out over this difficult situation, but can't wait to have you back. And I think it's going to be a balance going forward. And I think it's really important to include the patient's perspective in this. Rob, did you have a question?
There we go. Sorry about that. Am I still unmuted? Am I muted? All right, brilliant. Yeah, no. I mean, obviously for physiotherapy and a lot of what a lot of our therapists do relies on that sort of touch, contact, and I mean, I'm very aware that I've recently performed one of these with a client, and it was happenstance really. He sort of knocked the computer, and as it turned, I was reminded of filters on social media where people can put in this prism, this triangle, a very specific view that they want you to see. But as I say, the client knocked the computer, and the nuances that I picked up from the side, i.e. the pile of clothes and things like that, does it make you wary that we can manipulate the screen so easily? I was tempted to put a shirt and tie on tonight, for instance, but then I thought no.
I think we're living proof that you can manipulate a screen with us all being in blue.
Yes, in your offices, yeah. 2 meters apart. yeah. I mean, like I say, for you having to be hands-on, I mean, for shorter periods of time on screen, on camera, we can maybe hide discomfort that we're feeling if we're, for whatever reason, in your case, and from my case, for instance, when you're doing that interview with your client, you don't get the normal pungent smell of cannabis from the house or things like that. The things that can be missed by not being there in person. So I think like every kind of technology, whether it be the A-bomb or the combustion engine, I think compromise and taking it with a touch of, a pinch of salt, a bit of caution is probably the way forward. I think from a social work perspective, not necessarily a case manager, this sort of format, this platform could let a lot of people fall through the cracks. The kind of people go, yes, I'm fine. How quickly can I get rid of you? Those kind of people, or even better, just avoid your contact. They have the option to just go ignore or message later or whatever. It's good times. I enjoy it. I mean, for things like this where you're speaking with professionals are obviously brilliant, but yeah, there's a lot that can be obfuscated over the internet.
I agree. Simon?
Well, thank you. Could I just check with any therapists who did new patient assessments, how they felt about that in comparison to ongoing treatment?
Anna, do you want to answer that?
So I had a new patient, which was really interesting because a self-funding patient, So someone I wouldn't really expect to come on board under lockdown. With Andy said, oh, we've been to the house, we build a relationship. Even if I've seen someone in a clinic prior to lockdown, is completely different. They know you, you know them slightly better. So I was really surprised that I actually had a referral for someone with Parkinson and fractured hip, discharged from hospital, wanted to maintain the progress. Obviously, community services pushed to acute part of the services, so nothing available. So he searched for private provision, and from the word go, it was said to him it can only be online. We weren't prepared to go out and assess, so George practiced Skype with the patient, set him up on Skype. At that point, it was really interesting. On the day of assessment, the patient had a support from social service. So the ladies kind of run around the house with the laptop, and I had to make a judgment where we were going to perform the assessment, what we were going to do. And I really approached with the caution. Managed to do a lot of usual tests. My 5 times sit to stand, some observational tests, walking forwards, walking backwards, to build some idea about the proprioception, about other problems, some hip extensions, hip abductions, just to see what we're dealing with, and approach the treatment with a caution, explain to the patient, as soon as we see each other, we will have to repeat some of the tests or do some more. And I had a revelation when I rang him next week for an appointment, and he answered sitting on the floor. And out of the assessment, context of assessment, I actually found out much more about the patient, because I thought he can get himself on the floor. Then he managed with a laptop to place it in the right place, and then said, I'm ready, stood up off the floor, went to the right perspective. And I actually found out much more in that intro to the first session about his physical ability. So there are ways to spot it, and I suppose will be one of the things, and it's not because I'm massively experienced, but I think our prior knowledge and experience and observational skills, and when we go to the community, when we enter the house, or when the patient sits in the chair and we see them first time in the waiting room, and then we follow them when they go to the cubicle or to the clinic room, we start that assessment straight away. So maybe objective outcome measures weren't that working very well, but from the movement patterns and the movement behavior the patient demonstrated, I actually was able to find out quite a lot. And I feel we work at a very high challenge level with this particular patient. However, he asked me this week when I'll be able to see him in person. He was one of the first patients asking this question, which is really interesting.
And the other thing is that because of the way we work with case managers, we have some immediate needs assessments, so they have been invaluable. And we've said to our case managers, look, it's not life as normal. We normally do our assessments under an hour and a half. So with our complex brain injured patients, then we've taken the immediate needs assessments. We've gone back and had Zoom meetings with our case managers and said, okay, well, what we think we can achieve is this, 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 and this. And that will take X, Y, and Z. But we can't achieve this, this, and this until we get out of lockdown. And they've taken that back to the solicitors. And I think I kind of get the impression now there's kind of this, well, let's wait till they can get back face to face. So it's never had the opportunity to test it out other than with a self-funded patient this time. But we were ready. We had 3 of them problem solved. I think it's just scratching your head, isn't it? And you've got to find another way sometimes. Yep. Anybody else?
Okay. I think, Chris, did you put your hand up?
Yes. Actually, it's Jane. If I can ask you a more paediatric-based question, how have you found the uptake from families that of children with, say, GMFCS 5 levels that have had no support going in?
We've had the uptake.
You have?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a lady who is completely dependent in bed. She has 24-hour nursing care, and my role has been to educate, and I've actually managed to delegate and hand over handling skills that I was struggling to hand over.
Okay.
Because I was stepped back. I'm on WhatsApp, which is not perfect. I'm strapped to the end of the bed with a my viewing angle has had to be sorted out, but care support staff would step away from the bed when I went in. You know, it's Sue's job, let her get on with it. And it's like, no, you're going to have to be my hands. We're going to have to work this out together. You know, take yourself through it. You start, and when you get stuck, or, you know, tell me what you feel, tell me what you're not liking. And I actually think for the young lady involved, it has been hugely empowering. And I certainly think in terms of when I'm training in future, I certainly think I will think about stepping out of the room to do it.
It's made me definitely see that I've been guilty of sort of, you just rush in and sort of put hands on, and the times have been to sit back and go, oh, hang on a minute.
That makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah. My verbal skills and cueing skills and instructional skills have gone through the roof, because you find yourself, your hands are playing under the desk going, oh, and you can't. And so you have to stop, think, and just really give clarity with what you're delivering to people. And that is great as a practitioner. It just makes you think.
Can I ask one more thing about, say, Zoom fatigue or whatever, you know, sort of online fatigue of people? How long session, what length of session have you found has been the best?
We've taken the individual patient because we could, because of the strange circumstances we found ourselves in. Going forward.
My diary, for example, is full of half-an-hour sessions with more able patients. But when I have a patient, like you asked, which requires support and explanation and guiding people, they are 3/4 of an hour to an hour. So it depends really, but if someone works as an individual and have to concentrate on a screen and moving and analyzing and processing, sometimes half an hour is plenty from that perspective.
Lindsay?
Let's go to the bottom bar, Lindsay. Mute.
No, I've had similar experiences to yourselves, really. It's quite interesting just to hear your stories, because I think, you know, for example, the person that you were talking about, where the support workers were always sort of backward in coming forwards, I found it really beneficial to not be in the room. And they've actually done, you know, with one particular client, they've done amazing work with the patient. So that's been a revelation. And also the whole idea of using your verbal skills and just slowly talking people through things and really seeing how they improve just by, you know, just going step by step, keeping it simple, getting family members involved as well. Yeah, I think it's been an interesting, you know, experience. And I really do think that it's something that would be especially helpful for patients perhaps who travel a long distance and may come to see me for blocks, but then don't see me for a while, but would like to have some sessions in between. So that, you know, I think there's lots of benefits, but, you know, the hands-on is definitely, it's definitely part of the toolbox. It's not instead of.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been interesting. It is interesting still.
Anybody else?
Is anyone from the NHS on this? Just to check, what is your experience? Because
Sorry, was that to me, Anna? Yeah, sorry, I only worked 1 day in the NHS, yeah. But my experience is that, well, all outpatient services were shut, and some places got up to speed doing phone calls or virtual contacts and appointments for outpatients, and some didn't. And some are perhaps about to restart. That's in terms of MSK and neuro rehab type appointments. And staff in those areas, depending what grade you were or what hospital you were at, got redeployed to wherever was needed initially for, well, it depends, 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks, and then now there's a bit more organisation that people are still redeployed, but certainly outpatient services are starting to think about how they would restart, especially when other types of non-hospital services in the community restart, and maybe we haven't.
But would you use the video link consultations, or the departments are looking to go back hands-on?
I think it depends what hospital and department you're in.
Right.
There is an NHS specific virtual system.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few, but the one in the hospital that I'm at is called Attend Anywhere. But typically, no surprise, you know, you might have the software to do that, but it doesn't mean that your PC that you're going to use in the hospital has a webcam or a video.
Right.
So, for example, like someone like me might be able to do it from home, or there might be a lot of people able to do it from home, but depending whether you get agreement for that and how numerous other things operate, depends whether you're actually doing it or not, I think.
Thank you, Simon. Louise, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I thought I should just point out that I'll start my video if you like, you can see me. That as my role is a clinical academic role, so across the NHS and the university. So I was redeployed clinically more through the pandemic, working back on the stroke unit. But our trust has worked quite differently across stroke and neuro, and so it's been quite interesting to look at how that's working in terms of when face-to-face is possible and when it isn't. But we've been pretty quick on the uptake, I would say, of remote consultations. Started off predominantly just telephone first off, until we got, and then WhatsApp and any other form we could use, until we're using Accurix, which is similar to Attend Anywhere. And we've got more and more savvy with how we're using that. So, for example, we've now been working out how to use other people to join into the Accurix, such as interpreters, so that we're able to use them easier, or to use other family members who are not in the same house, which is something I'd never really thought of before in terms of, you know, we do our assessments, but actually that's been really nice to be able to involve family members even when they're in lockdown. And we're in the middle of doing a service evaluation. So we've had 600 contacts, remote consultations in April. I'm just awaiting May data, and we're looking at things like how long it takes, because we found exactly as you've said that in terms of, we're just wary that commissioners might think this is a quicker, cheaper thing to do. So we're trying to capture, well, one, what we're not able to do, and patients, we've got like a three waiting list now. We've got a normal waiting list, and then we've got a sort of monitoring list who we've not been able to see at all remotely for whatever reason. And then we've also got a list of people that we've seen remotely to do what we can, but we now need to see them face to face. Yeah, also capturing how long it takes in total, not just what you record on our electronic note system, but the preparation and the post consultation. And I'm just very conscious of that we're trying to do all that to pull it together before we then make that across our integrated care system across Lancashire and Cumbria. and then think more nationally to make sure going forwards as a profession, I think it's really important that we capture what we're able to do, but also what we're not able to do, and who we're not able to do it for in terms of health inequality data and social demographics of people who don't have access to this sort of technology, who don't have data. Even if they do, they might not want to do video consultations if they're just using their phone, for example, because they don't have a data package, and all these sort of things that I think it's just important we capture. So I guess just to highlight that we are doing that, and we're trying to do that, and we'll be doing more. But even though the research world's changed quite a lot in terms of how quick you can get things up and running, it's still not as quick as it needs to be. But watch this space.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Can I just say thank you very much for everybody for joining us. This is the first time we've ever done it. And to come out, we're here on A Brave New World, in a Brave New World, was something we wanted to do to start this conversation. And I know it's now 8:15, so thank you very much for your time. Good night.